RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information on this program is not to be construed as medical or legal advice, and appearance on this show is not necessarily an endorsement, and as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. As always, I am Zak the Corruption Detector, and this is another edition of Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream. Joining me tonight is my good friend Donald Jeffries, historian and author. Donald has been on the program with us before. Last time he was here, we talked about crimes and cover-ups in American politics, and this time we're going to be talking about hidden history, an expose of modern crimes, conspiracies, and cover-ups in American politics. I hope everyone's having a lovely day. Things are looking good out there. Every single time I turn on the news, check out the status on Twitter, looks like we are inching closer to victory. We're certainly inching closer to Election Day, and things are getting wild. Do me a favor, guys. Don't forget to like and share this broadcast. Help us break through the algorithm. All right. Do me a favor. Sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a very brief word from our sponsor. With so much tension in the country today, the right to defend and arm yourself is more important than ever. You can show your support for the right to bear arms by getting the Second Amendment gold coin. In a time like now where the country hasn't been divided like this since the Civil War, it's important to back what you stand for, especially if it's the best country on earth. This limited edition coin is beautifully engraved with pro-Second Amendment quotes and logos, and it's the perfect gift for yourself or a patriotic friend or family member. The Second Amendment gold coin normally retails for $39.99, but I've partnered with supportthesecond.com to give away this coin to my audience completely free. That's right, you can add this coin to your collection today for free, and all they ask is that you pay the shipping and handling. And this coin, valued at $39.99, will be yours free. Go to supportthesecond.com or click the link in the description or pinned comment below and get yours today. Remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right. Once again, everyone, thanks for joining us, and please join me in welcoming our guest for this evening, Don Jeffries. Don, it's been far too long.
It has. Thanks for having me back, Zach.
Well, it is my pleasure. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of the work you've done. You are the author of several books, Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups, Survival of the Richest, Bullyocracy, and The Unreals. So you are definitely a man of history and letters. You've done a lot of work on, many things that I would think a lot of people believe they know the true story about, but even throughout your research, you've been able to kind of uncover some things that maybe were on some uncomfortable truths, you might say.
Oh yeah, there's if we had real investigative reporters in the media, which we don't, unfortunately. So it's left to people like me and you, people on the internet, people that write books like mine and get them published by the very few courageous publishers that are out there that are willing to publish this kind of information. And there aren't many of them. Skyhorse has published 3 of my books in their division of Simon & Schuster, so I'm very grateful for that. But especially, it's not just I go a little bit beyond. I come from the JFK assassination research community. That's where I got my start. I worked for Mark Lane as a volunteer. He was the most famous critic of the Warren Report, Rush to Judgment. Was on TV and radio quite a bit. Testified for the Warren Commission. He was my mentor. I was a volunteer for his group, Citizens Committee of Inquiry, as a teenager. So I got down that road in the mid-'70s, and I never looked back. I mean, once you start opening those doors, the rabbit holes are everywhere, and they lead you everywhere. And I've certainly, in hidden history, I tackle everything from the JFK assassination up to the Obama years. And believe it or not, Donald Trump isn't even mentioned because it was published in 2014. He wasn't on the radar yet. So it's hard to believe of a political world before Trump, but even though it goes to the Obama years, he's not mentioned. But I made kind of a specialty out of the Kennedys, and I admit to still being a bit of a Kennedy fanboy. I admire the family. I think they've been treated harshly by court historians and especially by the left, ironically, because people tend to think of them as liberals, and they are classical liberals in a sense, like I am. I'm a classical liberal. But I think hidden history is mostly noteworthy for the investigation I conducted into the death of JFK Jr. And no one up until that point, outside of early reports on the internet by people like John Hankey and John DiNardo, John T. Quinn, no one had done anything since then. And I talked to local reporters at the scene. I talked to JFK Jr.'s adult inner circle, his high school inner circle, to establish that indeed he had a quest to find out who, alone amongst the Kennedy family, behind the scenes, he was obsessed with his father's assassination, and he wanted to find out who really did it.
I was just going to say, you're probably going to have years worth of material to write just from 2016 through 2020. You can probably get about 8 to 10 books out of that. But, what you just said right there, that JFK Jr. was obsessed with finding out about his father's killer. Isn't the official narrative that he wasn't looking into it at all, and he basically was just, laissez-faire, hands off, I don't care?
Well, there had never been anything. I was amazed to find that out. And Wayne Madsen told me, you probably heard, he's a pretty famous alternative investigative reporter. He told me that he was supposed to meet with JFK Jr. a couple days after he unfortunately died. Well, we think anyhow, right? That to meet him at George Magazine headquarters and to be hired as an investigative reporter. And his assignment was the assassination of President Kennedy. So, and there are other indications, as I said, that the people that knew him behind the scenes said, yeah, he talked about it all the time. But to show you how, now I don't know if this was in response to, I'd like to think this is in response to my writing on the subject, but it is interesting that recently, I don't know, maybe earlier this year, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he's basically the official historian for the History Channel.
Okay.
So you know where he's coming from. Basically, he's, as a court historian, the History Channel's, not telling you the truth about anything. So when they have history, right, exactly, and that's when they have any history on there at all, even fake history, because most of the time they're running American pickers and nonsense like that. So they don't even have fake history shows on the History Channel. But this guy comes out and he said, first of all, he claims to have been a good friend of JFK. I'd never recognized his name, JFK Jr. And you have a lot of that out there. Who knows? But he said that JFK Jr. could never understand why people were so obsessed with his father's assassination. And it was one subject you didn't discuss with him. Now, I know personally what a lie that is, because, again, I talked to people, and one of the people is an adult inner circle who strongly requested to remain anonymous, as several people did that I talked to in this book, was not exactly sympathetic to where I was going. Mm-hmm. This person didn't think there was a conspiracy or whatever, but begrudgingly admitted, yes, he used to talk about the assassination all the time. And his high school girlfriend was, said he had a quest to find out who did it. So, and that's an absolute lie. This is also, we know JFK Jr., for instance, one thing I didn't know, again, doing research, I find out things, for a lot of times that I didn't know. For the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I believe it was in 98 or 99, he brought as his guest Larry Flynt.
Really?
Who, yes, Larry Flynt was his guest. And not only was a pornographer, but Larry Flynt notably offered $1 million reward for the real killers of President Kennedy early on.
Was that in the movie?
No, that wasn't. In which movie? There was the.
I can't
People
remember.
versus Larry.
People versus Larry Flynt. Yes.
I don't know. I think I saw that, but I don't know if they. My guess is they probably didn't mention it, but that was something Larry Flynt was very involved in.
Wow.
But and he also published nude photos of John's mother, Jackie.
Oh, wow.
So, and JFK Jr.'s family was a little upset at him for that. I think Ted Kennedy especially. What are you doing showing up with this pornographer who published pictures of your mom? So, but that must have been how certainly he couldn't have liked that. So, but apparently that's how strongly he was interested in the subject of his assassination. But he brazenly brought this guy this persona on gratitude to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So
Wow.
I was amazed to learn that. So he was, and we know that he published an interview with Oliver Stone in George magazine.
Yeah.
And he was very interested in the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in Israel. So Kennedy was going down these paths already, and he was, most importantly, he was about to launch his political career. People don't realize how young he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was 38 years old when he died. He wasn't even 38. He wasn't quite, no, yeah, he was 38 years old. 38 years old. So he was barely old enough to be president. But there's no question. Again, everybody behind the scenes said he was about to leap into the fray. Hillary Clinton, of course, a lot of people put with the Clinton body count simply because Hillary Clinton was about to enter the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of always, the Clintons are kind of always around these things,
Yeah, but very close in proximity to death quite often.
Exactly. So it was very convenient for her. But again, I don't look at it that simply. But I think that he was assassinated. I don't think there's any question about it. My investigation showed that he couldn't have died the way they said. And there was so much disinformation. I don't know. We can talk about whatever aspects you want of it, but
I want to talk about truly what happened. I mean, obviously there was a lot of disinformation. I think they kind of impugned his abilities as a pilot. Yes. I mean, just everything that they did in the reporting of it. It was like, oh, John Kennedy Jr., a terrible pilot, very irresponsible,
reckless.
Kills his whole family.
Yes.
And of course the entire rescue scenario with Bill Clinton. I mean, yes. Waiting 12 or 18 hours or something yes. crazy like that.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. And well, they impugned him as reckless. And again, people think of, and this is in hidden history. Readers will see that I give example after example how the Kennedys are nominally considered on the left for historical purposes, but they are treated differently. I think it's Saul Alinsky that said there are no enemies on the left, and the left usually operates that way. They don't criticize, they don't eat their own. But the Kennedys have always been treated differently. That's why John F. Kennedy, especially, I talked in Hidden History about the absurd Judith Exner stories. I mean, this woman, she didn't even mention the mafia at all in her original press conference, and then that became the entire story. She has no credibility at all, but all these stories about JFK's, the mob connections of his father, all these kinds of things, bootlegging tales, all these are disinformation.
Really?
If you source them all back to their sources, they all come from either CIA or mafia sources, always.
Wow.
And in reality, Joe Kennedy Sr. is probably the reason why so many of the Kennedys and why he went through such tragedy, because he was he had all the right. He reminds me a little bit of Trump in the fact he had all the right enemies in his day. FDR hated him. Winston Churchill hated him, and he was an advocate for peace. And he did not want us to get into World War II, as a lot of the left didn't at that time. And the establishment despised him because Churchill and Roosevelt were pushing for this. So, and then his oldest son, people don't realize, JFK wasn't the first one of his children to die. He was the third child to die. His oldest son, Joe Kennedy Jr., who, if you've seen JFK, how good-looking, charismatic he was, Joe Kennedy Jr. was better looking and a natural politician.
Wow.
There's no question he would have been the first president. Not JFK didn't even want to be a politician. He was kind of an introvert and a writer. He wanted to be a writer. He was an excellent writer. And it's another lie that he didn't write profiles in courage. Again, these myths about the Kennedys come up all the time. But he was actually an excellent writer, wrote a lot of his speeches, as a matter of fact, with Ted Sorensen. But Joe Kennedy Jr.'s death was suspicious. He blew up. They never found his body. In kind of a strange mission. And ironically, the plane that was in closest proximity to him was flown by Elliot Roosevelt, FDR's son. This kind of a strange, pretty much the last person to see him, I guess, where his plane blew up.
Wow.
And then the oldest Kennedy daughter, Kathleen Kennedy, Kick Kennedy, who was also had a lot to offer the world. The Kennedy girls, Eunice Kennedy Shriver founded the Special Olympics, did wonderful work, and probably if she had been born 50 years later, she would probably be running for president because she had a lot of those abilities, but women just didn't go that far then. Kathleen Kick Kennedy would have been in doing that kind of stuff as well, but she died in a separate airplane crash. So right there, before you're out of World War II, Joe Kennedy Sr., who happens to have the entire establishment hates him. He has 2 of his children die in separate plane crashes. Very strange. And then, of course, later JFK would be assassinated. RFK would later be assassinated. So that's 4 children that died separate unnatural deaths.
Now, when you said that the rumors of Joe Kennedy Jr. being a bootlegger, that's not true. What about the rumors that he teamed up with the mob to help JFK win, was it Illinois, I believe?
Yeah, Chicago. Yeah.
Chicago.
Again, I think that to whatever extent that's true, again, it comes from the same sources. And these people hate Kennedy. They hate the Kennedys. And people don't realize, again, it's very many parallels to Trump. Trump is despised by the entire Republican establishment. They've never liked him, even though he's the head of the Republican Party in theory. Same thing with JFK. When he got in the White House, Harry Truman despised him. Eleanor Roosevelt despised him because they all hated his old man. And they didn't trust him. And so that old guard, the Adlai Stevenson, they grew to like him, but didn't like him initially. So these rumors about him being a bootlegger, again, as far as I can determine, Joe Kennedy Sr. made a lot of money by being very shrewd in the stock market and getting out at the right time. And so he didn't lose his money like a lot of people did. And he knew when to go back in on it. And of course, I'm sure he probably had insider information, but looking at considering how wealthy he was, and I wrote a book, Survival Riches, about the crimes of the 1%. And there's, I think it's Victor Hugo that said, behind every great fortune lies a great crime. I haven't found a great crime that Joe Kennedy Sr. committed. And he certainly, just the tragedy he experienced in his life. I've recounted 4 of his children died unnaturally and separately. And most people don't remember Ted Kennedy was in another plane crash. He survived. So, what are the odds that 3 of your children are in separate plane crashes? I mean, I don't even think you can you calculate that.
Yeah, but the odds are pretty unlikely.
Yeah, pretty unlikely. So, anyhow, so even before you get to JFK Jr., you have all this stuff happening. And of course, Ted Kennedy, I was the first one really, I think, to write critically about Chappaquiddick, and that I don't accept either of the theories about Chappaquiddick. I don't think Ted Kennedy was a murderer. He may have been a lot of things, but he personally, I don't think he was a womanizer, but I don't think he would have left a girl to drown like that. I just don't believe it. And I don't believe his story. There's no way he could have gotten out of that car drunk and with a bad back when a young athletic girl couldn't, and swimming across the channel. His story makes no sense. He didn't get help or whatever. But
so before you go on, though, I mean, because that's good. I mean, what would you think actually happened? I mean, do you think that they threatened to kill him, they killed her, and then they said, you got to play it off like this?
Yes, I think that was his political assassination. Because Ted Kennedy would have been the Democratic nominee. He wouldn't even had to do anything but just show up and smile during the primaries in 1972. Unquestionably. And Richard Nixon, we know, behind the scenes, E. Howard Hunt and all the dirty tricks, they were obsessed with Ted Kennedy. And there's a reason to believe, I read in Hidden History about E. Howard Hunt and I think Bernard Barker. Several of them were seen on Chappaquiddick Island afterwards. Yes. And so, I believe it was his political assassination. It also had the convenient factor of happening on the exact same night that we supposedly landed on the moon the first time. That was the night of the moon. So naturally, it didn't get as much attention as it normally would. But yeah, I believe the evidence shows that Ted Kennedy wasn't in the car. I don't believe he was in the car. I don't think he found out about the accident until the next morning. I believe they came and told him, "Hey, there's a dead girl in your car in the bottom. You make up a story." And he wasn't like his brothers. He wasn't quite as bright. So the story was pretty stupid. And I guess he felt he could. But at any rate, his political career was ruined because of that. So you have all these Kennedys. Robert F. Kennedy lost a child. David Kennedy, to a strange drug overdose in the mid-'80s. And then you had Michael Kennedy, another one, a prospective politician of RFK's 11 kids, who died in an extremely strange skiing accident, back in 99, I think it was. And very, very curious, supposedly while playing football or whatever. So the Kennedys, really, and I recount them all in there. You talk about plane crashes, and again, doing research, I found out more than I knew before. But you extend this out to the families of, for instance, Ethel Kennedy, who's still alive, but Ethel Skakel Kennedy married Robert F. Kennedy and had 11 kids by him. I didn't realize her parents died in a plane crash as well. Not only that, her brother died in a separate plane crash. So again, what are the odds? Robert F. Kennedy lost 2 siblings in plane crashes, and his wife lost parents and a sibling. And I mean, can you imagine you and your wife having 4 separate plane crashes taken immediate? I mean, again, I don't know what that means, but the odds are astronomical against it.
Either you've got the worst pilot pool that you're pulling from and the worst airline mechanics, or, you're being targeted. I mean, because let's just be really honest. I mean, if we're going to talk about our favorite Anon, 17, I'm sure it's going to come up at some point because we're talking about JFK Jr. But we were told that something like 7 out of 10 plane crashes were not accidental. I mean, 7 out of 10 times you can basically count on the fact that it was sabotage. You look at a family like this, who, and you're saying there was no criminality. I'm willing to believe that, because how many of these criminal dynasty families do you see, 10, 15 plane crashes just taking every single person out? I mean, you've got an evil family who are committing crimes and they're getting away with it and they're enriching other people, so they're protected. This sounds like somebody or a group of people wants to make sure that this family stops, that the lineage just ends.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. So, we get to JFK Jr. and, I think the most famous plane crash of them all. And all the information indicates that he was about to enter the political world. There's no question about it. Despite the lying, people like Chris Matthews, who would get on, even though he had mentioned him running for the Senate before he died, he would get on and have another show about how everybody said he wasn't going to enter politics. And this is what happens. The media steps up. They slandered JFK. And I describe how the story changed in history, where initially there were reports that there was a flight instructor on board, several reports. And what would happen, and I talked to many people, and one of the people that I communicated with was Edward Meyer, who wrote the official weather report for the FAA that night. Now, at the time of the crash, he was incensed at the media, and he put out a blistering public statement saying the media has lied about everything in this case. The weather was not hazy. The weather was fine. JFK was not reckless. He was well-trained, and he had made this flight many times before. So I emailed him, and he stood by every statement. He's even madder now, if you can say that. He said, yeah, of course, they lied about everything. It was ridiculous. So that was the myth that went out there, and you'd have like people that they would interview, and I describe it in the book who the people were that would talk about, I was out that night, it was horrible, nobody should have, Kennedy was, and of course the inference is, and again, this is the myth, much like the myth about Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., is that he was in with the mob and bootlegger and had no scruples and bought elections for his son and cheated votes, and that's the myth. Okay, that's what they want you to believe and how you see him. Well, the Kennedy siblings from JFK on, and certainly JFK Jr., the myth about them is that they're all reckless. They're always daring, cheating death or daring death with their craziness, and this was just another reckless thing. JFK Jr., he had a death wish, and he didn't mind that he was so reckless. He took his wife and his sister-in-law down with him. And the evidence just, again, it runs contrary to that. And I quote one of his flight instructors in the book, who talked about, no, he was not reckless at all. He was well trained. He was a good, cautious pilot, and he would not have taken unnecessary risks. But those people didn't make it, to the networks. They weren't interviewed on CNN or any of the other stations. Instead, they would talk to random people about, I flew out there and crazy. Anybody going up, and they would describe how, become disoriented, you turn upside down, all the kind of nonsense they did. And what was the instrument trained or not, and all these things. But so many things are important about what they did cover up. And one of the most important things they covered up, and I was fortunate enough to have videotape coverage. One of my friends in the JFK research community, Scott Myers from Texas, he recorded live coverage from WCNBB, I believe, in Boston, from the time the plane was first reported missing. And so I think I have 4 or 6 hours worth of coverage or something. But so I went through it, and he sent it to me. And because it's live and it didn't have a chance to edit it, there are countless references to the 9:39 p.m. phone call from JFK reporting everything was fine and he was awaiting landing instructions. Now, AP, UPI, ABC News, I think, all reported that in detail this 9:39 p.m. phone call. And in fact, on this coverage that I have, you can see a Coast Guard officer, Todd Bergen, who I tried to track down. I found his phone number and called him, left him a message. You know, he never called me back, but and I'm not surprised. I'm surprised he's alive, actually, if you're assuming he is. But he was sent. He gave an interview specifically about the 9:39 p.m. phone call. And so you can hear him talk. Oh yeah, you know, he said he was gonna go, and then he's dropping his sister-in-law off, and they're going on to the wedding of Rory Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy's youngest child. So again, obviously this conversation happened. It was reported over and over again. Well, as it turned out, once the story got settled and the bodies were supposedly found and everything, the 9:39 p.m. phone call went down the memory hole, and they never had contact with him after he left the airport. So the Coast Guard petty officer, Todd Bergen, showed up and did an interview and was sent by the Coast Guard to do an interview about a phone call that was never made. I mean, you know, this is the stuff the public's supposed to, and of course there's not a single reporter there. I watched, you know, snippets of the press. Nobody says, wait a minute. The Coast Guard, that's what I would have done. I would have said, well, what do you mean? Why did the Coast Guard send somebody to give an interview? And of course, they wouldn't have been able to answer that, but they don't have to worry. As somebody said a long time ago, they don't have to worry about the answers if you don't ask the right questions.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what our reporters do. They don't ask the right. Oftentimes they don't ask any questions. But
sure.
But the 9:39 p.m. phone call is totally significant because that's the exact minute, 9:39 p.m., that they claim the plane went into a sudden death spiral, went straight down into the water. So it's impossible to believe that at the very moment they claim the plane inexplicably took a nosedive into the water, that Kennedy was talking calmly and saying everything's fine. You know, I'm awaiting landing instructions. So that's why they had to get rid of it. And you know, it's so many other things. I mean, I talked to Steve Zbraka, who is a local reporter for WCNBB. He was one of the few local reporters to do something. He told me, he volunteered to me. He said, you know, something about that case never smelled right with me. Something wasn't right. Didn't add up about it. And I have the email, the excerpts from his email in the book. But and I talked to him a couple other times after that, and he said he's the one who is the person who identified. There was a reporter from the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, a very small local newspaper, who saw an explosion in the sky pretty much at the exact same time in the exact same place that that we were told Kennedy's plane was going into the water. He was never identified. Now, Steve Zbraka wasn't on duty that day. He just happened to be driving by and he ran out. I think he didn't even have his tape recorder or anything. So the days before cell phones. So he just took some notes. And I don't know why he didn't get the guy's name, but he told me in an email, I'd be willing to swear in court that this guy existed. He gave a description of him and said, he absolutely talked about the explosion. Now, I corresponded with the editor of the little newspaper, the Vineyard Gazette. Now, this had to be the biggest story they ever had. This is, like a little tiny newspaper that serves the people of Hyannisport, I guess,
Sure.
the vacationing rich. So they're not used to breaking any news stories. So this probably was the biggest story they ever broke. She claimed she didn't remember. And she said, I was there and we only had 4 or 5 people here at the time. I would remember it. So of course I found that impossible to believe. How would you forget the most important story your little newspaper ever broke?
Now, she didn't remember the report about the explosion, or she didn't remember the coverage of JFK Jr. dying?
No, well, yeah, maybe she didn't remember the exact incident, but yeah, I mean, she didn't remember that it was her reporter from a tiny newspaper that had 4 or 5 employees. This story got national play. Again, AP, UPI, they all quoted that.
It was everywhere.
A reporter for the Vineyard Gazette saw the explosion in the sky. So these are the things, again, with a little bit of digging, you can find out that, yes, of course it happened. And so if a real media institution that had subpoena power and had the money and the finances to really track these people down, you could get somewhere by tracking Todd Bergen down and trying to find out who this reporter was. But as it stands, she's telling me, and then she didn't respond to any of my subsequent emails. And I also emailed Susan Warnick, who was the reporter who interviewed Todd Bergen on air. And I emailed her 4 or 5 times, and she never replied.
Nothing.
Because I just wanted to say, what did you think of that? That you interviewed somebody about a phone call that the government would later tell you didn't happen. But I suspected she wouldn't. I was surprised Steve Zabraka, communicated with me, but because most reporters are like her, that where they just ignore it, they turn off their critical faculties, even when they're involved. I mean, that happened to me in Sandy Hook when I knew a local reporter here, and she's the one who interviewed the school nurse at Sandy Hook Elementary School, and she got this breathless report about how, Adam Lanza, his mother was the beloved kindergarten teacher at the school. We all loved her.
That wasn't true, though.
No, of course not. So I contacted this woman and this reporter. I said, well, what did you think of that? Did you go back and ask the nurse, how could you possibly make a mistake? If she wasn't connected at all to the school, and you're talking about how beloved she was? And she said her answer was there was no conspiracy. Well, that's what you run into, So I mean, how do you? That's what I'm saying. So this is the problem, and I guess it's good because for people like me that want to write books about this and research it, there's an opening. Well, there wouldn't be if these people did their jobs.
And the problem is that there is so much disinformation about every single conspiracy that you can possibly imagine, that people do their own research and they get their own ideas in their head. It must be this way or it must be that way. And, I'm a very open-minded person, and I try to get as much information about a subject as I possibly can. But even then, I'm very careful not to draw firm conclusions. I can say, okay, I know this because it's quantifiable. I have the evidence to say that this happened, but even still, there's a lot of gaps in most of these things. We can, have an idea of what happened. For instance, what about you mentioned that, maybe or maybe not that JFK Jr. might be on the Clinton body count. I personally believe that that's very likely that he probably is, because anytime there's a death that is an opportunity for either Bill or Hillary, it seems like, they're definitely going to be profiting off of it. It's almost ubiquitous. So why? Okay, so what is the official timeline? At 9:39, all of a sudden the plane goes out. The government doesn't mention anything about an explosion. They wait some very lengthy amount of time to send anybody out. It seems this American treasure, you would have the full might of the U.S. Coast Guard and many other agencies out there trying to look for them. What was the official narrative, and then what else did you find that didn't line up?
Yeah, well, I mean, and they didn't go out looking for him at all until Ted Kennedy woke up. I think it was Leon Panetta, I believe, woke him up like at 5 or 6 in the morning and said, "Look, are you ever going to go look for my nephew?" And that's when Bill Clinton got the military out, and which was it's the entire thing was strange because the military ended up coordinating this, and as has been pointed out, JFK Jr. was not a veteran, so it was a little strange, but the FAA went into full cover-up mode, and they're the ones that had the press conference where the guy very arrogantly said there was no communication, because I think somebody did mention the 9:39 p.m. very gingerly mentioned that. Oh, what about the 9:39 p.m. phone call? And there was no, and it's very dismissive. No reason why it was reported widely, why someone was sent by the Coast Guard to talk about it, but just and they don't have to explain these things because nobody asked them to, outside of us. We're asking now, but they're not. I mean, look at the Martha's Vineyard Gazette editor just tells me, no, we never. I don't know what you're talking about.
No idea.
Okay, and then she doesn't answer the rest of my emails. So, I don't know. I mean, and that's what makes people go down so far down the rabbit holes, because are these conspiracies so big that they can reach into a little newspaper that has 4 or 5 employees?
Well, that's the thing. They can. I mean, how easy
so.
is it? We are talking about people with just an immensely unbelievable amount of power. Right. So I mean, all it would take would be for one shadowy agent to walk in a suit and say, "Hey, guess what? You remember JFK Jr. that flight? Well, we did that. And if you want to make sure that you and your children don't end up in a plane crash or a car crash or just dying of carbon monoxide poisoning in your house in the middle of the night, then just go ahead and say this. We've got talking points here. Go ahead. There you go."
Exactly, and I think for all the people that all the unnatural deaths that I've recounted in my books, I mean, Hidden History is full of them. We don't know how many others might have happened, but had a scenario like that where hey, you shut up about this and this, and they agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't really necessarily blame people for doing that, especially if they have families and they threaten their families or whatever. But if you're a professional journalist, and especially if you're let's say you're the president of a network or something like that, you ought to have some courage, and you should be able to say, look, I don't understand. I guess no one goes in the media anymore for like Lois Lane or people like that, where to actually be an investigative reporter. There aren't any, they don't exist apparently. But
no, that's me. This is people on YouTube. That's basically it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the media journalism as a career is dead. I mean, there is no truth in journalism. Unfortunately, honest reporters are few and far between. And you said the president of a network. I mean, unfortunately, the society and the situation that we live in, I think by the time they get to that point, they've only gotten that high because they've been so easily bought. I mean, there is some amount of blackmail material that they have on them, and I mean, it's clear that there is a level of coordination in the mainstream media, and they can just tell the story that they want to. Thinking back, the first Iraq War, CNN, their coverage from the soundstage with the blue screen. The missiles are coming. The missiles are coming.
Yes. And those reporters are still working there. I mean, you can even see during the coverage of this pandemic or whatever. I mean, how many times CBS News was caught? They were caught at.
He's showing the footage from Italy.
Yeah, from footage Italy. They were also caught staging a fake line for testing. Mm-hmm. Outside a hospital, where the hospital employees came and said, yeah, they came and asked us to sit in the cars and make it look like it was a long line. I mean, what, why would anybody believe these outfits? They have no credibility. And Katie Couric a few years ago had a gun control debate, mm-hmm. where it was the people that were on the side of pro Second Amendment said, well, and they showed how she edited it, mm-hmm. to make it look like when she made her stupid little childish point about gun control that they were speechless. Mm-hmm. They're so stunned by Katie Couric's brilliance that they couldn't respond. And of course, she just simply cut them off and made them, I guess showed them like looking at her like, what could we possibly say to that?
I remember.
So, so this is so these are the people, unfortunately, that you are relying on to investigate. And we know, going back to the JFK assassination itself, how the media and you talk about the presidents. Now, he wasn't a president of a network, but Don Hewitt, mm-hmm. was one of the top people. I think he was the director of news for CBS for many years. And after he was retired, he came out and made these statements about, I wanted to do this and that on the JFK assassination, and acted like he understood that there was a conspiracy. Mm-hmm. He oversaw the production of three awful specials by CBS News propping up the Warren Report. So if he really believed, what was he couldn't change it at his level? I mean, I don't understand it. And I know from Gerald Celente tells the story, that I'd interviewed before, talks about, John Connolly in private would talk about what a big conspiracy it was. Mm-hmm. And, but, on the record, he would say, oh no, Oswald did it. And so, what, these people have no courage. I don't understand why they I don't know. Maybe maybe I'm too foolish, but I think people ought to stand on conviction sometimes.
I mean, I think what it is that these people have too much to lose. I mean, not only their lives, but they have grown accustomed to a certain standard of living. I have lived very cheaply in my 42 years, so if I lose anything else, it's not going to be any skin off my back. So I'm not that worried about it. But think about it like this. I used this analogy the other day, and I liked it so much I'm going to do it again. Look at a country like Colombia, basically a narco-democracy, okay, where the cocaine traffickers, the Dons, they own everything. They own the police, they own the Senate, they own the president, they own the entire administration. And, if you're just a normal person, a family man who is trying to make a living and make your way, unfortunately, cocaine is the relative currency of the Colombian society. So it's woven into there inextricably. You can't separate it, okay? And you can't stop it. There's corruption everywhere. And it's the same way here, except it's not, just drugs, but I mean, it's, the military-industrial complex. We've got criminality, public corruption woven into the society of America. And people want to live, I mean, people have families, people don't want to, lose their jobs. And if you speak out, then you stand the risk of, losing your life or losing your career, being vilified by the entire media. And, I mean, that's why we have this community that we have now, is because, basically all of us are just tired of it and we don't have anything to lose. I mean, they've already destroyed America, and I want to see it restored. I want to get some amount of truth and justice and, reconciliation amongst all of us here. So, I mean, we've got to look into these things. We've got to look into all of these various conspiracies, because, it's shocking when you look at your books, when you go as far back as we did last time. And I know that the conspiracies extend far beyond where we began, but it's almost like this is just the way that human society is based. I mean, it's built around fear and corruption and scandal and covering it up. And it's just it's a sad, sorry state.
Well, and there's a reason why, Lord Acton, the great liberal Confederate sympathizer, by the way, from England, during the war between the states, all the good classical liberals sided with the Confederacy. But he left that great statement on the record that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think this is why the founding fathers set up such a great form of government. They understood that. They understood the temptations, and that humans, the more power you give almost anybody. I mean, and we should all want that. We should all realize none of us are beyond that. Mm-hmm. That you give us enough tension and groupies and money and whatever, and things, temptations, that we're human. We're going to fall victim to that. So I think what happens is, people tell me all the time, you think everything's a conspiracy. And well, I pretty much do, because I think we're run by conspirators. And so I think this is what they do. I mean, this is it's standard operating procedure for them.
Exactly.
This is how they conduct business. They don't know any other way. Mm-hmm. So if someone is in the way, JFK, especially, JFK Jr. comes along. They've already, probably killed who knows how many Kennedys.
Yeah,
they've already
what's
knocked
another
off.
one,
Yeah, this is just was one family, Yeah. So, and it's basically not too different than what you see in organized crime, the mob. What do? If somebody gets in the way, they go and they get rid of the competition. Yep. And I think that's what they do. And they somehow they live with themselves doing it. And again, do they make a deal with the devil? Are they all, there's indications they're all into satanic and crazy stuff. I don't know. So maybe that's it. So they don't have the same moral compass that we like to think we have. But for people just to poo-poo these things, it is what it is. I mean, again, they say everything's a conspiracy. I just look at these things, and of course I'm looking at the interconnections as well. Mm-hmm. But I'm just looking at each thing individually. If I look at the JFK assassination and the RFK assassination would have never happened if he would have never been assassinated if JFK hadn't been.
Right.
That's why it was necessary.
I mean, how many of these things, ever since JFK died, would never have happened if he would have been able to keep living right. and been president? I mean, the country would be a much, much different place. Absolutely. We can't even imagine. I mean, it's cliche when we say that we lost our innocence on November 22nd, 1963. But there's an evidence. There's a lot of evidence for that. And I think you can look at, if you look at a peak of a prosperity, we think of the 1950s was, the boom era. But I think if you look at America on November 22nd, 1963, if you're looking at a graph, I think that's when America was probably at its peak in terms of influence, prosperity, opportunities for everyone, thriving middle class, all the things that made us exceptional to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And from that moment on, the graph is like a line down. I mean, just completely down, because we will never reach those heights again. And a lot of that is not only because John F. Kennedy was a great man compared to most of his peers. I don't know how great he was necessarily, but compared to the rest of the crowd around him, he was honest and wanted to do good, was an idealist. And but if you look at what happened afterwards, certainly with Vietnam in the 60s, the race riots and the other assassinations of MLK and Malcolm X and RFK, I don't think any of that would have happened. And it would have been a completely different era. I don't know what the world would have been like, but we do know that JFK, under National Security Action Memorandum 263, had just approved that paved the way for complete withdrawal from Vietnam by 1965. Mm-hmm. So and people say and people like Noam Chomsky on the left, who continue to talk about leftists that hate Kennedy. Noam Chomsky hates the Kennedys.
I mean, and these guys will basically tell you, it's a good thing that he was killed. Basically, he got what he deserved.
Yeah.
Which is, and they wouldn't say that about anybody else on the left, but there's some kind of hostility there. But people like that, they keep the myths going, and they ignore something like NSAM 263, which delineates. I mean, you can't get much better documentation of what he was going to do. And then the clearest proof of the conspiracy and the JFK assassination is the fact that the day of the assassination, McGeorge Bundy, who I believe was the insider inside the White House who was in on the conspiracy, has to be, he drafted NSAM 273, which completely contradicted 263 and in fact paved the way for escalation in Vietnam. Now, he had to have known JFK would never sign that, because he would have been fired instantly. What are you doing? We just wrote 263 that we're getting out of Vietnam. So the fact that he wrote that the day of the assassination, he knew JFK wasn't going to be around to sign it.
Right.
And of course, Lyndon Johnson couldn't wait to sign it. So those are the kind of things you see. That's not a theory. I mean, I don't have theories. It's a fact. These memorandums prove what happened alone. You don't need single bullets and all the other stuff.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of the weird things with JFK Jr. because, I think that for a lot of people, some of the weird stuff about it, like the fact that, nobody went in, nobody found him for a long time. So, who knows that he's actually dead? Who knows where the body went? And then they showed pictures which, seem to have a couple of dummies in a plane on the bottom of the ocean. Yes. And if you look at that and they say, well, that's JFK Jr., can't you tell? It looks like it's a crash test dummy. I mean, it doesn't look like a human body at all.
Absolutely. Well, and the fact that they were cremated at sea in record time. And I published excerpts from something as establishment as the Boston Globe questioned it. So, Catholics usually aren't cremated. There's no record of any other Kennedys being cremated. Why would this happen, and why was it done so quickly? And Ted Kennedy, I think by the time this came around, Ted Kennedy is sold out completely, because he participated in the cover-up, and he went on board the ship, and he kind of oversaw things. And of course, he was much older at that time, but very disappointed that he did that. But clearly, something was, and this, of course, gives birth to theories. Did he really die? And that's why, probably the strongest indication for people who believe he didn't die was the fact that, we never really saw the bodies. We didn't really see the clear points of the wreckage. They roped all that off. They didn't show it to the public. And the fact that they were cremated and their ashes thrown at sea, and the excuses. I mean, I published, one of the people were saying, I think it was Chris Matthews again, or one of these guys, that was saying, the Kennedy, they didn't want a ghoulish memorial for him where people would come and desecrate his grave. And nobody desecrated JFK's, the Eternal Flame, or RFK's. Why would they do that? It made no sense.
No.
But again, these are the things that were, and again, you don't have people questioning. And of course, something like that is a little harder to question, because, it's possible that, that could have been his wishes. Who knows? Although at 38, would he have really made clear his wishes? I mean, maybe he realized, being a Kennedy, I better put it on the record. I don't know. But,
I'm over presidential age. I might as well do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I just need to say thank you to Lisa Kamler very briefly. Lisa sent a donation on Cash App. I appreciate that, Lisa. And just checking to see if there's anything on PayPal. Brock says, "Bruh, looks like you got some sun. Keep up the good work. And glad you found a chance to get some color." Yes, I went to a rally on Tuesday, and I was standing in the sun for like a solid 8 hours. I think I got a little bit of sun sickness for a couple of days there. I didn't feel so hot. Also, Patrick, love your show, and thank you for thank you for all your hard work. Thank you very much for that, Patrick. And that is it from today. So thank you, you three guys. I appreciate that. So what is the situation then? What exactly do they say happened with the plane? I mean, planes just don't go into a death spiral out of nowhere. I mean, what was the reasoning behind the supposed crash?
Well, I think they attribute it. It all gets kind of caught up in the fact the weather was bad. He should never have flown. It was his Kennedy pride and recklessness that thought he could do it. Wouldn't wait till the weather cleared up, and he got disoriented. And it's as we've been told by so many amateur pilots, very easy to do. I've been over that water, and it's easy. It can happen to anybody, especially someone with Kennedy's lack of experience. And I have all the quotes in the book, but so I think they he ended up becoming upside down or something. He wasn't really versed in flight instrumentation or something. I don't know, but and of course he just ended up, spiraling into the sea without realizing it. I guess. Now you think he might have, tried to contact, radio in for help, and of course the record shows that he did radio in at 9:39, the exact minute, and said everything was fine. But so they don't even go there. And of course, the black box was mysteriously, I believe, was turned off or something. It's, just.
Is that possible? I mean, black boxes. I mean, the whole point of a black box is so that you know exactly what happened. I thought.
I think the battery was dead or something.
Oh,
something.
Okay. All right.
People can read my chapter on it, and I've this is 4 books back, so I don't remember everything, but it's all in there. And I forget what the name you call it. There's a lever that was hit that made no sense. It should not have been. It was found in the on position instead of the off or something. And again, I'm no expert on planes, but lots of people have questioned that why there would have been no reason for him to possibly have that condition. And apparently it also had a thing where he could set it for cruise control, something where he could glide.
Sure.
If he was experienced problem for I don't know how many miles, but it would have been enough time for him to glide it to safety. But so he didn't take advantage of it. And of course, we're again told that he was a Kennedy, therefore he's reckless. And, the anger, and again, he was attacked in the media again, even after he died. Lots of people just said, bastard took, he had to take because of his recklessness, he had to take his wife and her sister along with him too. And so it was, this is the way typically, again, the Kennedys are, and I have throughout hidden history. When I write about the Kennedys, I show. I mean, William Kunstler was a very famous, very far left-wing lawyer who defended lots of the radicals. I think he was one of the Chicago Eights lawyers or something.
Oh, yes.
Like that, yes. And so this guy was around for a long time, and he hated the Kennedys. And I have the statements on the record where he basically say, that it's a good thing that they were assassinated, because there's no telling how bad things would have been if they had lived. And that's his quote. And I can't think he said it to People magazine. And I have in the book, and people don't realize this. And so they're Eugene McCarthy. I write about that as well, who, again, was a darling of the left, the anti-war movement, who ran against LBJ first, challenged in New Hampshire, and got LBJ to drop out of the race because he made such a good showing. And then Bobby Kennedy came in and was criticized for coming in on McCarthy's coattails. But Kennedy was portrayed as like the establishment guy coming in, and McCarthy's drawing. And I show how McCarthy's entire staff was populated with ex-CIA people.
Oh.
I mean, basically CIA, everybody there. So that's who was backing his campaign. And McCarthy, again, hated RFK and made a very disparaging comment after he was assassinated. It said something like basically he got what he deserved or something stupid. And so the Kennedys are the only family where these kind of comments are acceptable, and nobody really, really says anything about it. Now we have somebody, RFK Jr., who is very boldly. I mean, he's certainly. You talk about a media blackout.
Mm-hmm.
It was a couple of weeks ago. He spoke before. Now it was hundreds of thousands of people in Berlin. Now the media, everyone from CNN to Fox News, downplayed the crowd and said it was 30,000 or something like that. It was hundreds of thousands. All the alternative media said that, and his speech was as bold as anything you're ever going to hear. He just was condemning the lockdown, condemning the authoritarianism, condemning Bill Gates and the vaccines and all this, just incredible stuff.
Well, and he just had his daughter and grandchild die in a very mysterious drowning accident as well.
Well, actually, and that was the latest Kennedy death. It was actually his niece.
His niece, okay.
His niece, yeah, his sister Kathleen Kennedy Townsend was named for Kit Townsend, who died in a plane crash years ago. Her daughter was Maybe Kennedy McKean. Now, Maybe McKean died along with her little, I think, 8-year-old son in a typically bizarre Kennedy death.
Like 4 feet of water or something like that.
Well, it was the Chesapeake Bay, but I don't live that far from the Chesapeake Bay, but I would know never to take a canoe out on the Chesapeake Bay, which is what we're told they did. And not only that, they took a canoe out to chase a ball. The Kennedy family couldn't afford another ball.
Right.
This is the story we're told. Now, it gets stranger though, because maybe Kennedy McCain, her job was the director of a global health initiative for Georgetown University, I believe, and the project was funded by who else? the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Oh, no.
Yes, indeed. And not only that, there was an article, and it actually came out a month after she died, which is very bizarre. And it was written by Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, her mother, and RFK Jr.'s sister, and maybe Kenny McLean, the girl who died, and Joe Kennedy III, who was a former congressman but did not have RFK Jr.'s courage when he was in there. And they basically say, we love our brother Bobby, but he's dead wrong about vaccines. And they just criticized him, and including, again, I can't tell you how bizarre that is, that it came out a month after one of the writers was dead, his niece. I don't know why they held it or whatever, and I don't think it's an accident that really you can look. It was basically the week after her body was found, and it was. That's when RFK Jr. suddenly became so radicalized. Mm-hmm. He took off on Instagram and lit into Bill Gates like any good conspiracy theorist would. Mm-hmm. I mean, he attacked him. He attacked vaccines with a viciousness he never did before. So, I can't help but think that somehow it was related to that.
I actually think that is exactly the case. Yeah. All right. Let me just say, you guys, we've got 4,600 people here, 1,700 likes. Please consider hitting that like button. I have dropped the, there we go, right there, the call information on the screen. I have also dropped the Zoom link in the chat. Feel free to join the conversation if you've got questions for Don about any crimes and cover-ups and conspiracies throughout the 20th century, because we already hit the ones before that in the last show. Please do join us. And, of course, any questions specifically about JFK, JFK Jr., RFK, across the board, if you want to talk about the Kennedy family. We actually already have our first caller on the line, but somebody had asked in the chat why JFK Jr. had chosen the name George for his magazine, and I always assumed that it was George Washington. I mean, he's talking about the founding of our country and American politics at its core. Is that true?
Well, the theory, I know where he's going with that. The theory is that he named it after George H.W. Bush, because a lot of people think George H.W. Bush was because there is a memo that's out there that is signed by George Bush of the CIA. Now, right around the time of the Kennedy assassination. Now, and some people think they see him in a picture, but I've tried to point out to people his father, Prescott Bush, was these families always go back. They none of them build anything. They're all they come from wealth and power. Prescott Bush was a powerful senator. George H.W. Bush would have been pretty young in 1963. Maybe 30s at the most, early 30s.
He was married though, and he had Zapata Oil Company, and
he was, but I'm not saying he could have been privy to it, but the record doesn't indicate that if he was with the CIA, that he was very high up. So I don't think he would have been like one of the main conspirators or something. But people, the same way in the JFK Jr. crash, not only do some people think that the Clintons orchestrated it for Hillary Clinton, but many other people, including John Hankey, who produced a really good video. I think it's called The Assassination of JFK Jr. It's still out there online. Really, very well done, humorous, a lot of wit to it. But I think he mistakenly makes it a George Bush hit, like the George W. Bush orchestrated it.
Oh, okay.
So people, I don't think these things are that simple. I don't think that the Clintons or the Bushes, right. I mean, maybe in certainly some of the Clintons, Arkansas people, you can believe that. But in these bigger cases, I think there are larger forces at hand that have to approve it. I don't think they can just go off the reservation.
Right. It's not as simple as Hillary just waving her hand and then, people get killed.
Right.
I mean, I agree with you there. I think that it's a larger conspiracy. It's not just, a select group of people. I mean, you look at what's happening to President Trump right now, and it was initially billed as, it's only the top brass. It was 5 people. Maybe they had the wrong impression of President Trump. They had an opinion and they acted upon it, and they directed their underlings to do it. But now we've had all these text messages coming out showing that everybody knew exactly what they were doing. Everybody knew that there was nothing illegal. They knew that it was a complete frame-up job on General Flynn. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people involved, definitely. But I'm pretty interested to see if there's a possibility that maybe we can get some justice for JFK Jr. And if he's alive, don't get me wrong, guys. I mean, I want to make sure everybody here, if you believe JFK Jr. is alive, don't leave the channel because I'm saying that I don't think he's alive. I mean, we need to be able to have a difference of opinions. I mean, I don't want us to risk turning into the left, okay? Just because people live in America, we've been brainwashed. By and large, many people have been brainwashed by the media. You've been told what to think. And right now we have a unique opportunity to have a variety of opinions and to come together and have a conversation. So if you think that JFK Jr. is alive, by all means, call in. I want to know what the evidence is because I am open to the idea of him walking out onto a stage someday. Nobody's going to celebrate it more than me. But, you know, as it stands right now, I don't have any more evidence to say that he isn't dead. All right, so we're going to go to our first caller. It's going to be Gino. If this is the Gino that I think it is, then... Gino, what's up, buddy? Yeah, he's just waiting for his microphone to turn on. And let's see, 4,600 people, 2,193 likes. And thank you guys for bumping that like count up. Hopefully we can get it up to 4,000 by the end of the show. Gino, what's up, my friend?
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I'm eating a little popcorn here. Sorry about that.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'll take some.
Hey, good to see you, man. First time calling in live here.
Yeah, glad you're here.
Man, huge fan. You can ask my wife. All I do is talk about Red Pill all day long. Red Pill said this, Red Pill said that. You're my trusted news source. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Man, I can't tell you how much that means to me. I'm very flattered. Thank you so much.
So I got a question for Don. Hi, Don. How are you?
All right. How you doing?
Good. Just wondering, with President Trump being such good friends with JFK Jr. back in the day, I'm wondering when he gets reelected, and he will be reelected, I'm wondering if there's a possibility that the president will somehow bring out some files maybe that we're not aware of on the death of JFK Jr.
Well, certainly we'd all love to see that. And, you know, we were very disappointed when he was going to release all the files in the JFK assassination that had still remained classified. And then the CIA pretty much came in and told him he couldn't do it, and it didn't happen. And so, you know, so I don't know. Maybe if he gets reelected, he'll feel more emboldened to do it.
Right.
But you certainly, if he was friends with JFK Jr., you'd think he would want to know
right.
the truth about it. And I'm not sure what files are out there in terms of the JFK Jr. case, because I think it's a little more, but I don't know. I mean, there could be files out there as well, but I do know that we had all the early reports from the FAA weather reports and all that said what they would say in the media was completely false, that the weather was fine and so forth. And there was that 9:39 p.m. phone call that was made. Now, maybe they have a recording of that somewhere. That would be great to hear, but I don't know.
That was actually something I wanted to ask, if there was a recording of that, because, I mean, that would be perfect, you know?
Oh, it'd be wonderful. But if it's there, they're still trying to find footage of from the New Jersey airport where JFK Jr. took off,
right.
Because people said they saw him on his cell phone right before he went into the plane, and they've never been able to establish, naturally he didn't retrieve his cell phone, who he was talking to right before he took off. And so it'd be interesting to see if that's true, and also to see if there was a flight instructor on board. Video footage, but of course those security tapes, if they existed, you know, it happens in all these cases. The camera seemed to malfunction, or somehow we don't have the tapes when supposedly they have tapes of everything.
I was just going to say, you know, I mean, there's a camera on every corner. You know, I mean, just go back to 9/11. You know, how many security cameras do they got around the Pentagon? And mysteriously, you know, they either confiscate them or none of them work. And they always seem to not work at the most inopportune times like this. But, you know, you and I, we were getting a hot dog on the corner, and, you know, they got 16 angles of it.
Right. Yeah.
So
they think we're stupid. Honestly,
yeah.
It's embarrassing. I'm actually embarrassed for them.
Yes.
It's just ridiculous what they do.
It is.
Anyway,
so I got a theory. I got a theory about the JFK files. Okay. So obviously, you know, and especially now in the last week, we've learned that John Brennan had a major part to play in you know, the 17 intel agencies. He essentially wrote the portion about how President Trump was the favored candidate of Vladimir Putin in Russia. So the CIA, through John Brennan and his direct subordinates, had a major part to play in all of this. And obviously, there were a lot of people at the CIA, even after President Trump came into office, that probably were still beholden to the Obama administration and to the the former leadership there. So perhaps he held off on releasing everything because it was just about timing, you know? I mean, inevitably it would be extremely damning for the CIA, because I'm certain that it's going to show that the CIA had a large part to play in the assassination of JFK. And maybe he couldn't bring it out right then because they were already in the midst of, you know, orchestrating this coup against him. I mean, perhaps they were going to accelerate their plans. But, you know, like you said, Don, I mean, once he's reelected, and I as well, Gino, believe that he will be reelected, you know, I'm really hoping that that stuff's going to come out, because they just keep pushing it back. I mean, it's like, oh, you know, we got to wait another 50 years. I mean, because everybody's not dead yet. Anybody that, you know, might be culpable if this information comes out, we can't bring it out yet.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Hey, before I go, I have a special guest star I want to bring on here. He's
right
probably your biggest fan. He's my 8-year-old son, Caleb.
Oh, Caleb, come on out. Hey, what's up, Caleb? How you doing, buddy? Thanks for watching. I like the shirt.
He's the one, I don't even have my notifications on. He tells me when you're on. So
sweet.
Every single day. He'll text me at work and tell me, hey, your red pill's on. So yeah.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching, man.
Yep.
I really appreciate it.
All right. Hey, thanks for taking my call, and talk to you soon. Thanks.
Anytime. See you, Caleb.
Yep.
See you, Gino. Peace.
Good show.
Bye-bye. Okay, awesome. That's great. That's great. See, this is why I keep it a family show, guys, so you can watch with your kids. Bring the kids on. Bring them to the party. Let's see. We're going to go with Galaxy S10e. I know that's not your name, but that's the name of the phone that you're using. So hopefully we can get Galaxy S10e's moniker. We can call you something besides Galaxy S10e. All right, 4,700 people, 2,400 likes. Thank you for continuing to bump up that like count. And let me see. While we're waiting for that microphone to come on, I'll just see if anything else came through. No. Okay, no problem. Continuing on, Galaxy S10e. All right, so that microphone is not coming on. So what we're going to do is go to our next caller. And hopefully by the time that we are done with this question, then Galaxy's microphone will work. Looks like Aaron Moriarty is in the house. His microphone is working, and your internet is a lot better tonight. Aaron, how's your friend? Did everything turn out okay with your neighbor?
Yes. Hi, Red Pill.
Hi.
Hi, Red Pill. She is doing much, much better. However, I just got a call from my buddy who listens to you a lot, has never called in.
Okay.
And he's a paramedic. Are you still there, Mike?
Yeah, we're still here. Can you hear us?
I'm actually.
Yes.
Oh, you gotta mute your stream in the background.
No, I got someone on the line here. A friend of mine, Mike Murray. He's a paramedic.
Oh, I get it now. Hi, Mike.
In Iowa. He just called me while I was waiting in the queue, so I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I'm glad that he's on the line with us. Is everything okay?
No, he had to witness. There was an accident. A 2-year-old child was ran over by a car accidentally, and so he was just calling me, and I'm going to call him later after the show.
Okay. God, I'm sorry to hear that. That's horrible.
So I'll call you back, okay, Mike?
All right. Tell Red thank you for everything he's doing, and I'll watch his program tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for
He's
watching.
going to watch your
Mike.
program tomorrow. You're welcome. You're welcome, Mike. Bye. Yeah, real nice guy. I was on Thomas's show, True Reporting, and I gave out my number, and he called me. So my question for you is, the plane wreckage that they showed doesn't match the same kind of stripes as the actual plane that JFK Jr. had. Now, I think he might have had 2 different planes. He just bought a new one. But the stripe patterns don't match the wreckage and his plane. Did you ever come across that?
Well, what little we see of the plane records, as a Red Pill was pointing out, you know, it looks like a crash test dummies or whatever. You see the bodies. The public didn't get much of the view of that, and they quickly got rid of the evidence. It's pretty much like 9/11 and everything else, where they go to these crime scenes and they get rid of the evidence before independent people can examine it. In that case, they weren't going to let anybody near that alleged crash site to look at it. And of course, they use the excuse, well, the Kennedy. Then they get sympathetic to the Kennedy family. Well, they suffered enough. We don't need the ghoulish thing. Why do you need to see their bodies? And so they make you feel guilty for wanting to see some evidence. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I've heard that about that, and I'm not an expert on planes, but it wouldn't surprise me if it didn't match, because there are questions about everything about this case, and I wouldn't necessarily assume the footage was real.
Yeah, there are photographs that exist that show his plane and then shows the wreckage, the crash wreckage, and the stripes aren't the same. They're similar looking, but they're totally not the same. And also, our favorite Anon, I remember to use that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's even more important as we get closer to the election. They're coming after us hard.
Our favorite A said that JFK Jr.'s plane is still flying. In fact, it was here in Wisconsin a few years ago at they have an annual big airplane deal, the EAA or something like that, experimental aircraft. It's been there, so it's flying still.
Do you know which post that is?
No,
it sounds familiar. I mean, there's been a couple of different pictures of planes, and I remember going down the rabbit hole on them. But
it's a little confusing because I think that he had just bought another plane before and I'm not sure if he was driving his old plane or his new plane. So the stripe differences might be because they were different planes.
Okay.
But I just got to say, this idea that was put out there, and partly by our favorite Anon, that his plane's still flying, so that leaves open the possibility that his death was faked, would just put chills through all of the deep state. Just the idea that he might be alive. I mean, it's brilliant because it's.
I completely agree with you there. And Don, let's just say, for instance, that somebody like Hillary Clinton did have a direct hand in the assassination of JFK Jr. I mean, the very idea that perhaps it didn't work and that he's just been in hiding all these years, waiting to come out and tell the truth, probably at the worst possible time for her when she's trying to steal the country back. That would be a pretty scary proposition. I mean, it's like, I know what you did last summer, you got a group of 6 friends and you think you ran over a guy and he's dead, and then next thing you know, he's coming back around to take revenge. So this is definitely something that I've considered before, Aaron. It would be pretty awesome if that was the case. Oh shoot! There was another point I wanted. I'm gonna have to come back to it. It'll pop back into my head at some point. But okay. But yeah, Don. Any information about his various planes?
No, I really don't know other than the plane he was in. But I really don't. I don't discount. I don't dismiss anything when people say JFK Jr. that he could still be alive. I mean, certainly nothing would surprise me at this point. I know he didn't die the way they say he did. It couldn't have happened that way. I just, assume he was assassinated because, first of all, he's a Kennedy. He was obsessed with his father's assassination. Mm-hmm. He appears to be maybe the most morally grounded of all the Kennedys.
Absolutely.
Of that generation. So he didn't have a hint of scandal about him. And obviously he was the sexiest man alive. So he probably would have gotten lots of the female vote just on that alone.
Sure. And,
so I think he was a presidential candidate that would have been a dream presidential candidate that I don't think he could have lost. So my only question would be the logistics here, that he would have had to have found out that there was a definite hit coming. So otherwise, why fake your death? And then there would have to be a reason behind that. It's already been 21 years. Right?
This is the point, and it ties into this. Okay, so there's a blog that I read called Crazy Days and Nights, and it's this guy. He's an entertainment lawyer. He's anonymous, but he posts all these blind items about celebrities, people in Hollywood, people in business, politicians, stuff like that. And one of the blind items was in reference to JFK Jr. Supposedly, during his time while he was running George, he was in need of financing and somehow had secured off-book financing with some less than scrupulous individuals, perhaps some, I don't know, maybe some cartel people or anything like that. Did you ever find anything to indicate that perhaps JFK Jr. might have been in that situation? Because the rest of the blind said that as a result of this, close interaction that he had, not realizing who it was that he had borrowed the money from, he then faked his death and, went on to live a different life. And, obviously that would also explain, the strange circumstances of what happened and why nobody's seen or heard from him.
Well, I would find it strange that he would need to borrow money from anybody. I mean,
Okay.
he certainly should have had enough money. I mean, I don't know how successful George Magazine was at that point. So a lot of people claimed that it was going to go out of business, but that, in retrospect, that's hindsight that tries to explain. Well, he didn't have a successful magazine. Nothing about the guy was successful. But I think you have to have a reason why you would do something like that. And it's been 21 years that he stayed in hiding. So if he really did have a quest to find out who killed his father, so that would mean if he was alive, he'd be 59 years old. So at what point is he going to step back on the stage? Now, we've heard rumors. I've just heard rumors that it was going to happen here or there or whatever. Now, maybe Trump gets reelected. I mean, I've heard people say, Trump was going to make him his vice presidential candidate or something. So I mean, I don't follow it that closely, but I think at some point you have to explain why he would stay hidden that long, especially now if Trump is in the White House and if Trump is really still in contact with him. Then at what point, why stay hidden so long? But again, I don't discount anything, but I think that, like you, this would be the perfect ending to a Frank Capra film. I love
Absolutely.
Frank Capra movies. I would love to see JFK Jr. come out from the stage and, lead the white hats into finally rounding up all these deep state criminals. But I'd like to think that could happen, but I don't know how likely it is.
Well, my opinion is that he wouldn't be able to come back into public life until the cabal that truly had been taken care of. So, I mean, we need to break down and rebuild the clowns in America, CIA. We need to, disperse this criminal cabal that, exists on every continent. That's what I think President Trump is doing. So I don't think it would be safe for him to come out and say, hey, here I am. By the way, for the last 21 years, I've been investigating the assassination of my father, and here's the receipts to show you who did that. As soon as he, came on the scene, he would mysteriously get run over by Kevin Spacey's limo driver or something like that. All right, Aaron, thanks for your call, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, man. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, awesome. So yeah, cool. We got plenty of people now. Let's go with Brock, because Brock tried to call in a couple of shows ago, and I was unable to take his call. I also need to say thank you to Joseph, too. Joseph sent a donation on Cash App. I appreciate that, Joseph. Thank you very much. Hey, Brock,
Bro, I
what's
appreciate
going on,
that.
buddy?
A lot. But when it comes to 18, this is one that is near and dear to me. So just to refresh, I don't think this has actually hit 18, just so everybody's aware, is that next letter in the alphabet in terms of where we're at with this and on the boards on how it was. I missed a little bit of the beginning. Mm-hmm. Did we get that to actually hit in terms of sustenance as to how real this whole JFK thing is with the boards and how important it is with the movement? It does come in, just like you're saying, in terms of dividing us. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about planes and everything else as to 524, 529 and everything in terms of dates, we've got a lot to discuss. I don't want to be the guy to do it for you.
No, yeah, we've touched on those things. I mean, I didn't use that as the narrative, throughput on this. I mean, we went basically from JFK's assassination and then kind of led that into JFK Jr.'s assassination. But Aaron just did mention the significance of the numbers and the potential difference in planes. Obvious, and then obvious. I didn't even mention that R post that showed up. But and Don, you may or may not know this, but this is one of the reasons why it is such, a heavy thing in the movement, because, much in the same way that our favorite Anon, the 17th letter of the alphabet, was dropping, these various posts on a variety of boards. We had one post in particular that was supposedly from someone named R, which would obviously come right after Q. So, it's one of those things that, we've stated a couple times, Brock, obviously, if it's true,
right.
Man, how overjoyed are people going to be? Because the symbol,
absolutely,
the symbol of him.
That's the thing is like, okay, in between this, like, Zach, you don't believe the same way I do on this one, just flat out, okay? But I was asked by a best friend as I was, already a big time conspiracy nut in deep in what's going on. But then when Q comes to light and makes all of us unify with each other, you and I become one. It was awesome, like a Disney song, except for not in a really bad way, if you know what I mean. So, like, bottom line being, I'm sitting there next to my bro, and he's like, "Yeah, but what would that matter? JFK is alive. So what?
Oh,
what does that matter?
It'd be so significant."
It would, but it doesn't make sense to a lot of people as to why. And because they don't connect the dots, they don't understand what Watergate was really about. They don't understand what the whole impeachment trial was about. They don't get to understand exactly how much of a horse of a different color this world has really been, while the Wizard of Oz was playing some serious stuff behind the curtains, and we got snowballed by the true control that, again, back to Disney, was that smoke screen that covered the cabal that is starting with the letter C, Clinton, and all the BS that was. So,
no, you're totally right. If you're not already in this world of research, shall we say, and looking at what's actually happening, then you look at JFK Jr. It's just another rich guy in Massachusetts that went down in a plane with his wife and his sister-in-law. Like I've said many times, like my first red pill was the assassination of JFK, and so that has always colored everything I've looked at. And I remember, we're the same age, I'm sure, so I remember distinctly when JFK
got 3 years
Jr.
on me. I just got more gray in the beard. You got 3 years on me.
I don't doubt it. So virtually the same age. Give or take 5 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But when JFK Jr. died, I remember being really saddened because he was like a fixture in public life. He'd be on the tabloids when he'd be going through the store.
This is where we're friends in a sense that I would call you a snowflake and say, yeah, I get that you were like, soft and whatever on that issue. And it's like, yeah, he side, that sucks. But he was a Democrat at the time. I was some Republican, and this is where I was, just to like bowed up in the chest as to this is crap, The dude was all up in all kinds of different things that I don't want to disgrace who he was. There was public defamation to his name. There was attempts at discrediting. And when we look back at it, because that's all we get to do, all we have is the history that has been, again, portrayed and channeled, funneled at us to look at it at a certain view. And it's, okay, the Jessica Parker, all these different things as to what makes him not look like the actual man he was. So that when you guys talk about, well, George, how did that actually come about and everything along those lines, it's hard to remember that he was on Leno and he's sitting there trying to be like, okay, not only George, but here's the book I did. Here's an excerpt from the book, and it's listing more than just the Monica Lewinsky, all kinds of different things with different presidents and everything else. There was so much exposure from what this man was doing, what he was exposing, that when Trump, and if we actually do go look at those files, because they're huge, it's just it's so much for any of us to be able to absorb and consume and be able to put out there. As you can tell, I'm talking really fast because there's a lot of information. This is probably one of the most passionate things that I have in me. That being able to get out that aspect is really difficult. But if there's one thing I could actually, the only reason I really called is this. In the movie Terminator Salvation, I don't care if you guys have seen it or not. The bottom line is there's that John Connor moment where he's on the radio. He's like, if you're listening to this, you are the resistance. When I listen to the voice that all of us who believe or don't believe. And we're going to leave it as that. I'm not going to try and sell Space Shuttle Jennifer Mack for 107. I'm not going to do that. Okay. But the bottom line is,
they're all friends. Don't worry about it.
I know, that's why I'm doing it, bro. Okay. So when that moment happens for me, it is John Connor. It is happening, and I am listening to that. And I'm the resistance on that front line. I'm talking to other people and trying to relate as to where it's at. So
100%.
And
I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
I love it. I love your passion, Brock, every time you call in. All right, bro. Listen, thanks for your call. I appreciate you, okay?
Hey, not a problem. When you see names changing in the future and whatever, just look for the bald head of the face or the the flare I come at you with.
Yes,
so
of course.
I'll hit you anyway.
All right,
bye.
man. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Yep.
Oh, good stuff. All right. Going to our next caller. I believe that we're going to go with Scott. Scott is going to be coming in next. And thank you very much, everybody. We've got 4,900 people here, almost 5,000, 2,800 likes. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Great calls tonight. Scott, you're on the air. What's going on?
Hey, man, I called one time before, and I'm glad I've got to get on again.
Definitely.
I wanted to, but there's something about Hillary was running for Senate around the same time that this happened, and people were trying to kind of get JFK Jr. to run for Senate in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a real thing, or is that just some kind of rumor?
Yeah, Don. I mean, it's true, correct?
Yeah, and that's where the theories about the Clinton body count come from, because JFK Jr. was rumored to be starting his political career, and he was going to launch it by running as a senator from New York, and that was Hillary Clinton's idea as well. So, you could look at it like he was in the way. And so that's where that theory comes from. But yeah, there's no question he was about to, despite the people like Chris Matthews in the media that lied about it afterwards, he was definitely going to enter politics.
Yeah, I mean, the Jay Leno appearance that Brock mentioned, I mean, there was, kind of a buildup in media exposure for JFK Jr., like right up until that point that he, that he died, or, he at least disappeared from public life. But I mean, he was always kind of ubiquitous, as I was saying, in coverage. He and Carolyn, I mean, they were fixtures in New York society, so lots of paparazzi pictures of them. But I mean, with George Magazine and with his, kind of, I guess I would say, maybe the straightening of his image. I mean, he was kind of transforming from, a young, affluent playboy into somebody who could be presidential or at least senatorial material.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's no question he was a political creature. He also appeared on Howard Stern, had a very famous interview with Howard Stern at the same time. So he was getting out there. He was he was always different from Caroline Kennedy,
mm-hmm.
who has always been like Jackie, where she had a don't ask, don't tell attitude, where, today, almost 60 years after her father's assassination, when she was a little girl when it happened,
mm-hmm.
She still acts as if it's hurtful for someone to mention it. And that's been her attitude. So I imagine behind the scenes, her and John Jr. had some interesting conversations, because I can't believe she was in favor of what he was doing, because
mm-hmm.
behind the scenes he was trying to eventually launch an investigation into his father's assassination.
Yeah. Now, this is, in regards to that, Don, were you ever able to, I mean, you said that you had spoken to at least one or two people who mentioned that, in private life he was talking about this.
Yes.
Was there any files or any hard evidence that he had put together, any research that anyone knew existed?
Well, in these cases like that, I mean, going back to Nikola Tesla and so many other people,
Sure.
Their files tend to disappear. So if he had any files, I'm quite sure he would have entrusted them to his wife, who's also died. And certainly the circle around him, the people that wrote books about him and so forth, they've all gone, they're certainly, but that was the same way with JFK himself. His inner circle, when they wrote books, they never stressed that the official story was anything but believable. In fact,
Sure.
They kind of stayed away from it. So in this case, none of them are questioning his death, but and certainly they're not talking about his. As I said, the court historian from the History Channel is telling the exact opposite, that you couldn't mention that subject around him. Like I said, I talked to somebody in his adult inner circle and his high school girlfriend. It goes back to when he was in high school. He was obsessed with it then.
We need to get you an interview with President Trump now. I'd love to be a fly on the wall there. That would be so great. All right, Scott, do you have any follow-ups for Don?
Yeah, just one real quick. You know, Amy Barrett was introduced by Trump today, and he had mentioned that she had worked with Scalia, under Scalia, Justice Scalia, and I was wondering if Don knew anything about maybe if there was some kind of conspiracy about his death.
Yeah, I absolutely potential conspiracy there, Don.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, there are rumors that he. I mean, you have people saying that. I mean, as I remember, I mean, there were reports that a pillow was found on his face, and he was. Other people claim he was at a place where rumors were there was some kind of sexual shenanigans going on with young boys. I mean, I don't know.
There was a man named I can't remember his name. I'm blanking, but he ran a website called Pure Energy Systems, something like that. It was a free energy website. He claimed to have built a private server for the likes of people that would be interested in crimes against children or watching material that were crimes against children, and that Scalia was deeply involved in it. Now, that didn't come out until after Scalia's death, and this guy is now sitting in prison for those crimes. So that could have been an effort of the Obama administration to impugn him afterwards, or it could be true.
And we do know that going back to my the book we talked about the last times, Crimes and Cover-Ups, I talked about all the people in history who died under suspicious circumstances, from President Warren Harding to Franklin Roosevelt to Joseph McCarthy, who did not have autopsies performed on them. And so we really don't have. Well, that was the case in Scalia's case as well. Scalia did not have an autopsy performed. So we're left with the pillow on his head. What really happened, the rumors about, the possible pedophilia. So who knows? But again, he was a powerful guy, and certainly, again, these organized crime, the way these people operate, they have reasons. Sometimes they have interests that are just personal feuds or something, like mafia people do, where they just maybe he offended the wrong person, they decide to knock him off.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Scott, thanks for your call, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, man. Thanks for calling again. We'll talk to you soon. All right, we've got a lot of people on the line. Let's go with Ribbit next. Scalia, yeah, so it was a hunting ranch. Scalia was found on a hunting ranch. Yeah, there was all kinds of strange things with that situation with Scalia. Ribbit, you're on the air. How are you, my Canadian friend?
Oh, I'm doing great. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, loud and clear.
I've got fans going in the background. So, hey guys, I'm calling to ask you guys about something. I came in a bit late in the show, so I'm not sure if you guys touched on this at all. But earlier, it was quite early in the whole Q thing. I remember seeing a video that compared the voices of an authority the day that JFK Jr.'s flight went down. The news anchor was talking to an authority about the black box or the voice calls and stuff, what they were saying before the plane went down. The voice of that person who was talking to the anchor, there was a video that compared that voice with the voice of the Q video's plans to save the world.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, there were some people who had put forth the theory that voice was actually JFK Jr. and then that Joe M. was in fact JFK Jr. I can tell you.
Now I never made the leap that the voice was JFK Jr.
Yeah.
But I did find it, because I did listen to the comparative audios, and they do sound quite alike. So it wouldn't surprise me if a person that was there that day that had to do with the events in some way is now doing the Q stuff as well.
Sure. That's not a great leap to make either. But I know Joe M. personally, and to the best of my knowledge, he wasn't directly involved in that scenario at all. So
All right.
So yeah, so I think I.
And
I think
that was Joe M's voice on the videos.
Well, Joe M is the man who produced the Plan to Save the World and a series of those videos that are very high quality. He does a great job. But yeah, that's definitely not him. And Joe, if you're listening, I mean, I'll probably send him a message just to make sure that I'm not giving out disinformation.
Because that's freaky.
I'm 99% sure that's not him.
Because if that's his voice, that's kind of freaky.
Yeah, definitely. And somebody says that Joe M. got Jr. to narrate it. No, it's definitely Joe M.'s voice. I've spoken.
Okay, it's his voice. As long as I know that it's Joe M's voice,
Yes.
now I've got the dots connected, so I don't feel loopy.
No problem. All
Well,
right.
that's all I wanted to talk about. So,
All
hey,
right.
you guys have done a great job tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking my call.
All right, Ribbit, have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, great. We've got so many callers, you guys. Wow, I'm going to try to go to one of these phone callers now because I know that they get pushed to the bottom. Caller, you're on the air. Can I get your name or a name?
Jimmy.
Jimmy, welcome to the show. What is your question or comment for Don or the audience?
Well, I just had a couple of questions. I wanted to ask Don if he laid any credence to the missile conspiracy about. Well, I guess you could say that about JFK's plane, JFK Jr.'s plane.
Yeah, Don, that would tie into the report of the explosion.
Yeah. Well, again, that's somebody saw an explosion, and there's also a lawyer, Victor Pravanik, who was in the area and heard the sound of an explosion as well. And so, and as far as I know, I don't know how often he was. I tried to get in touch with him. As a matter of fact, he never got back to me. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly whatever happened. The evidence indicates that JFK Jr. was reporting at the very moment that his plane went into the water for whatever reason, a death spiral. He was that moment awaiting landing instructions and reporting everything was fine. So I don't think anything can happen in like less than a second or whatever. So certainly in the explosion that the unnamed reporter from the Hyannis Gazette saw would certainly fall into that. But again, there was no investigation outside of people like me writing about it years later. And I got a hold of enough people to make a case, I think, but still I couldn't get a hold of everyone. And so it's hard to tell, but certainly that's a theory that there's some evidence for.
Now, right. Jimmy, do you have any information? Like, was there anything?
I'm 60 years.
Go ahead.
I'm 60 years old,
okay.
And one of my first memories is the JFK assassination. Mm-hmm. I remember how my family acted. Of course, I was very young, but I remember how my family acted, and I've argued with my mother for all these years, 55 years plus, about the lone gunman theory. Mm-hmm. And then I've just been a truth seeker my whole life, and I live in Oklahoma City, so the Murrah building bombing was another thing. Consequently, I met Alex Jones during that time, mm-hmm. who is slightly gone askew these days, but
sure.
but I just wondered what some of Don's thoughts were on that. I don't even know how old you are, Don. I just wondered that too.
Well, I'm about your age, a few years older, but yeah, I was a little kid when JFK assassination happened as well. And hidden history, I have an extensive amount of information about the Oklahoma City bombing. And you're right, Alex Jones did some great work on that. He had all the people on at the time back when his show was really cooking. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of great interviews that were. He had a big audience, and they had nowhere else to go. But yeah, I think that. Certainly.
Well, I've been friends with Alex for a long time, but he's something else nowadays.
Yeah,
I guess money and as you said earlier, but he does kind of. There are certain things that he was on the forefront with at that time.
Of course.
And people that I don't even get along with my family on this level at all. Because they want to accept the modern narrative, and I never have. I mean, consequently, because that's one of my first memories, I've always known, something's wrong,
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it's a hard thing to live with, as I'm sure you know.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. But the only way to believe the narrative of the JFK assassination is to not investigate it, not study the evidence. And then you can
yeah.
But certainly the Oklahoma City bombing is another huge cover-up. The magic fertilizer bomb theory is similar to the magic bullet theory. You have people like Ted Gunderson and General Ben Parton, who was the top explosive expert in the military, who couldn't get on television. And this is a general who's one of the top explosive experts, and he was writing and talking onto the forums he had then about there were explosives there. And if people watch the original coverage again from local media, like I have for the JFK Jr. crash, you can really find some interesting chestnuts there, because that's before the narrative gets set. And it used to be out on the internet, but there's coverage out there that shows how local media talked over and over again about the bombs in the building. And again, we kind of see a little of that in 9/11, but there's a lot of it out there with the Oklahoma City. But unquestionably, that magic fertilizer bomb did not do that. And most people don't realize with Timothy McVeigh, first of all, the judge was so prejudiced against him, they didn't allow his lawyer, who did a really crappy job, Stephen Jones for the most part, but he did assemble a 150-page brief that detailed a lot of these connections to strange groups, and he wouldn't allow any of it to be entered. So basically did not, in the record, he didn't allow a defense. And it was it was a terribly prejudicial trial. The defense, most people don't realize, the prosecution didn't even enter evidence to place McVeigh at the scene of the crime. Now, he was there.
Did not know that.
They couldn't present the evidence because every witness who identified him put him in the company of John Doe number 2.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. John Doe number 2 just mysteriously disappeared. They never brought him up ever again. And not to mention, ATF getting a call not to go into work that day, and then all of the records from Whitewater being in the building. I mean,
Well, I'll tell you that the persecution here in Oklahoma City during that time.
Yeah.
Because I'm a construction worker. I've worked construction and been a musician my whole life, and my brothers and I were down there in the days after that. Helping with, giving sandwiches and water to all the people in public service, because it was a beehive, for several days. And we were down there, and consequently, that's when I met Alex Jones, by the way. But anyway, we were down there, and, we've seen buildings get demoed, and we're like, well, hell, that building's been blown up partially from the inside. Sure. And boy, if you would say that in Oklahoma City at that time, I mean, they would read you the riot act. How dare you? How un-American.
Wasn't there also a police officer who was
Terrence Yakey? Yeah, he was.
God,
I think he. I have his death recounted in the book, but yeah, he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He was an honest cop, and they definitely killed him. I mean, I think they tried like 3 different ways to kill him.
I was going to say, like his wrists were slit. He had like a noose around his neck, and he shot himself like 4 times, and it was a suicide.
Well, there's more than just him. He's just one of those people. I mean, I've lived in Oklahoma City my whole life, and I know a lot of people. Especially as a musician, you meet a lot of people, and they.
I was going to say, I had State Representative Charles Key.
Yes.
I have a weekly radio show, I Protest. I had him on there last year. We talked about Oklahoma City. He did some great work getting the grand jury involved earlier. And so if anybody's interested, they can listen to the archives of that show. I have a lot of those kind of guests on my show. But it's Oklahoma City's really kind of an underreported, kind of a forgotten thing. 9/11 still gets a lot of play. But Oklahoma City, people forget at that time there was a burgeoning militia movement.
Yes.
A real third-party movement to throw the bombs out, term limits, all that stuff. And Bill Clinton, who could exploit that identity politics, which is just being born then, he was an expert at doing that. And he really used those deaths to political advantage. And he blamed the militia. He blamed talk radio. And at that point, you never. I believe that's why that you, for instance, never saw Ross Perot lost the support he had in '92. He ended up with 8% in 1996. Because a lot of people that were independent were rallying behind him. But unfortunately, after Oklahoma City, the demonization of the right worked very well. And unfortunately, that third party, which is the Reform Party, was being formed. You remember under Ross Perot. Looked like finally we were going to have a viable third party, but unfortunately Oklahoma City killed all that, and Bill Clinton was happy to exploit that for all it was worth.
Very true. All right, Jimmy, listen, man, I so appreciate you calling in. I really do want to do an entire video on Oklahoma City sometime in the future. So,
that'd be rich, man.
Yeah, definitely. So, there's only one really good documentary that I've seen about it. I believe it's called A Noble Lie. And, so I've reached out to those guys in the past. So, I mean, you've kind of lit a fire under my rear end. So I'm going to try to reach out to them again and see if we can get them on.
Well, it's just part of those things, Red, that I've lived with my whole life, that I know with all my being, I know that those things are not true.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I mean, you could, yes, you don't really have to be, just insightful or anything to see, well, that doesn't really make any sense. And I know sometimes, as human beings, sometimes things are, beyond what we can understand,
mm-hmm.
But when things have an appeal to them, when they seem evil,
mm-hmm.
And if you're kind of on the other side of things, you can see it, and it's always kind of driven me. But I won't keep you guys. Thanks, man. Don, I love some of your work. Got some good stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. And Red, your methods, the whole band. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
You guys mean the world to us.
All right, man. I appreciate you calling in, and thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Awesome. Great call. Okay, let's go with
beyond
this caller.
Beyond what we can understand.
Caller, go ahead and mute your stream in the background, and go ahead and unmute your microphone when your stream is muted, and we'll go ahead and take your question. And I'm talking to you, 2243. 2243. I'll ask you to unmute, and hopefully, maybe the caller doesn't know how to unmute. Hopefully you can hear me, caller. We just need you to unmute so that
he's unmuted now.
There you go. Can I get your name, caller?
Debbie.
Debbie, thank you for calling, Debbie. What is your question or comment?
I saw a video. I was watching a video, and it was about President Trump, and it said something about him having JFK's desk in the Oval Office.
Don, do you know about that? I mean, I've actually, I think that is the truth. I remember hearing that myself.
I think I've heard that.
Okay.
I assume it's true.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, in this video, he pulled out of an album, a picture album. It showed a picture of little John under that desk.
Yep.
Yes, yep.
And
definitely seen that.
As he was showing the picture, he said he's getting ready to, as in John is getting ready to, and then he just stopped talking as if he caught himself. Do you remember seeing this?
I did not see that. Don, did you see that?
No, I have not seen that. But I will tell you something about Trump and JFK. Roger Stone, who wrote the foreword to to Hidden History, the paperback edition, he contacted me after the hardback came out, and I wasn't even really sure. It's before Roger Stone really became big, because Trump hadn't announced for president yet, and he contacted me and told me how much he loved Hidden History and wanted to talk to me. So I talked to him on the phone, and I came to realize that this guy had I didn't really know the extent of his background going back to Richard Nixon and so forth, but he told me on the phone, Donald Trump knows about all the conspiracies.
Really?
You will love this guy. That's what he told me. And that's when I started supporting Trump, because I figured, wow, Roger Stone at that time, Roger Stone really wasn't as controversial, because he had kind of he's a reformed hack party, advisor who had certainly, he believed, I can tell you, Roger Stone believes in all the conspiracies, 9/11 and obviously JFK. So, which is, again, I think a reason why he was attacked later as well, too,
mm-hmm.
demonized. But so I remembered that always. And that's why when Trump backed off on releasing the JFK files, I realized, again, we don't know what powers these guys are up against, because I know from Roger Stone telling me that Trump does not believe the official story, certainly of the JFK assassination.
Yep. Yeah, and Debbie, someone in the chat said the Resolute Desk. That is the name of it. So yeah, that's totally correct. Well, if you can find that link, Debbie, if anybody can find that link to that segment with President Trump, I would love to see it. Absolutely love to see it.
Yeah, because he said, that's little John under the desk, and he's getting ready to, and then he just stopped talking.
Wow. Well,
so I don't know if he's talking about little John in the picture was getting ready to do something,
Right.
or he's talking about John in the present tense.
Right.
He's getting ready to do something. The other thing I wanted to ask you, since it hasn't been brought up, is the theory or rumor that RFK killed Marilyn Monroe.
Okay, yeah, actually, I think maybe we talked about this a little bit last time, or maybe, I mean, definitely we talked about Marilyn Monroe, but, I mean, supposedly she had affairs with both RFK and JFK.
Well, again,
yeah.
I think this is part of the mythology around the Kennedys. Now, there is some smoke there, especially in terms of JFK. I mean, I don't know, maybe he was sleeping with movie stars like Marilyn Monroe. But I've looked into Marilyn Monroe's death. There's no question. I think she was murdered. I don't think she killed herself for a second.
Right.
But I personally believe, and it's just speculation, I personally believe that her death was a warning to JFK.
Okay.
That we can kill the biggest movie star in the world, and what are you going to do about it? And because I can't, again, just much as I couldn't believe Ted Kennedy could leave a girl in the backseat of his car and just kind of swim away and go to sleep. I can't believe that. I just don't believe that about him. I wouldn't believe that about almost anybody. But whatever his failings are, he's not that morally bankrupt.
Yeah.
Or he wasn't. And I don't believe that RFK would kind of warn her to shut up. And and again, all of this is coming from mafia sources and CIA sources. All these things that are trying to implicate the Kennedys. But I think that she was killed probably by the same forces that later killed JFK.
Yeah, because they made RFK look like...
yes. He was ruthless.
I don't believe it either, so...
Yeah, it makes more sense to me that this would be more being added to the mythology to try to impugn the character of someone who can't defend themselves. I think that, just looking into the eyes of RFK and JFK and even, Teddy, they don't look like killers to me. I mean, it's the things that they were doing in the world and the causes that they stood behind. They just don't strike me as people who could kill anybody. I mean, not like that. Not just cold-blooded murder or assassination in that respect. All right. Well, Debbie, thank you for your call. Any follow-ups for Don?
Not right now, but I hope you come back on another time.
He will definitely be back on. He's got a lot more material we can go over. All right. Thanks for your call, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Good night. Okay, awesome. You guys, we've got 10 more minutes left. Let's go ahead and try to get to as many of these calls as we can. Caller, you're on the air. Can I get you to mute your stream in the background?
Yeah.
Excellent. Can I get your name or a name?
Kelly B.
I'm sorry, did you say Hallie?
Kelly.
Kelly. Okay, Kelly, welcome to the show. What's your question or comment?
Yeah. At one moment, I cannot find it anymore. The 3 guys that witnessed the Benghazi thing, and they were told to stand down 3 times.
Yes.
They submitted a huge report to who's the blonde guy that does not work. He's a Republican. He grilled Clinton up and down. I admired him so much.
And Trey Gowdy?
Yeah.
Yes.
They gave him a full report on all of it.
Mm-hmm.
He gave it back to him.
Yeah, I think you might be talking about my friends Nick No and William Cotel. Is that who you're talking about? Was that them?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been on the show a couple of times, and actually, I mean, I'm in close contact with them. We probably talk a couple of times a month, and it looks like they'll be back on the show soon, and a couple of their friends are planning to come on the show soon as well to talk about other things. But yeah, I know that they did give their report and their information on Benghazi to multiple congressmen and women, and it was and it was like basically they didn't want to take it any farther. I don't know about Trey Gowdy though.
Yeah.
I don't remember them saying anything about giving it to Trey Gowdy. That would definitely disappoint me.
I remember only one interview where they said they gave it to Trey Gowdy, and that interview is black. I haven't seen it since.
I will definitely reach out to Will and to Nick tomorrow and ask them if Trey Gowdy was one of the people who returned that report to them. That's really bad.
And also, do you still believe in Phil McConnell?
Well, I mean, I don't know Phil McConnell, so I mean, I don't have any opinion on him one way or the other. I think that, I mean, he did a lot. Because I never watched him. I mean, I only knew about him, and I knew that a lot of the people that watched me watched him as well. Yeah. But I mean, so I don't have any opinion, positive or negative. I think that the situation itself is tragic. You know, I mean, he's in a bad spot. Yeah.
Yeah, because he actually told what happened on 9/11 at the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
He said there was no way it happened. And also, President Trump was on right there at Ground Zero on the Twin Towers. And he said there's no way this could have happened.
That's true. That's true. He was interviewed. He was interviewed a couple of times, yeah.
Yeah. He said he had his men under there looking. And Phil McConnell come on. It was right before July the 14th, 2018. You know, President Trump during that whole thing looked kind of glum.
Mm-hmm.
That's when JFK Jr. was supposed to come out. But Phil McConnell said in June that JFK Jr. has been hiding out, in different places because they're still trying to kill him.
Yeah.
He was in Ireland in June on a base, and it was heavily attacked because they found out where he was at. That's the reason he couldn't come out on July the 4th.
Okay. Yeah.
And actually, we're expecting him to come out in October.
Well, like I said, if it happens, nobody's going to be more excited than I am. I mean, so who's saying that he's supposed to come out in October?
A couple of people, and somebody supposedly who is supposed to be him on Twitter.
Okay. Well, I'm always immediately skeptical of people on Twitter because there's like at least 4 or 5 different accounts claiming to be JFK Jr. So yeah, well, I mean, I'll wait with bated breath. I mean, if it happens, it happens, and if another date passes, then the date that I'm waiting for is November 3rd because I want to get the election taken care of.
Yes, no, it's stupid mail-in ballot.
Yep, definitely.
We can get those cleared up. But if you go back to the very first of the Q post, it's the very second post that they made. I think they're going backwards. The front. I think the front is now. Now, and the backwards is now.
That's right. It was a timeline in reverse. Yeah. So Red Pill Girlfriend and I were just talking about that because October 30th it said that Hillary Clinton will be arrested and indicted. All right. Well, listen. Thank you so much for your call. We've only got 4 minutes left, and I want to get at least one more person in. No apologies necessary. Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. See you. Bye-bye. All right. And I got to turn the audio back up for Dawn because her audio was quite a bit louder. Sorry for anybody who experienced any audio clipping. And unfortunately, here, let's, you know what? Okay, God's Guy called in, and I haven't talked to him for quite some time. So we'll go ahead and take God's Guy's call and bring him on the line. God's Guy, you're on the air. Good to see you.
Hey, Red. Hey, RP. How's it going? Let me try to fix my audio right now. I got to shut some things down.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you turn your gain down just a little bit for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Because that way I can keep it at the same level.
I'm not able to hear you guys now at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the no.
How do I get just the Zoom room on? Oh, this is going to be terrible. I wanted to talk to you so bad, man.
Well, here, Can you hear me?
I'm not hearing you.
All right. So what I'm going to do is you try to get your audio working, and I'm going to leave you here, and I'm going to take one more call, and then you should be able to hear us, okay? So I'm going to mute you. We'll bring somebody else in, and hopefully you will get your audio working. All right. Hey, what's up, Gina? Well, she can't hear me, can she?
So
all right.
What I'm going to do is
caller,
you try to get your audio
your
working,
stream.
and I'm going to leave you here, and I'm going to take one more
Caller,
call, and then you should be able to hear us.
Caller, can you go ahead and mute your stream so that we don't hear it coming through the computer, and then go ahead and unmute yourself when you have that muted in the background, and we'll get your question for Don. All right. Should hopefully you're good. Go ahead and unmute. All right, you guys, we're over 5,000 people, 3,357 likes. Please consider leaving a like. We're almost at the end of the show. Just got these last two callers, and thank you to everybody who has called in, contributed to the conversation. Sorry to anybody we weren't able to get to. And caller, go ahead and unmute your phone, 3093. Go ahead and unmute. There you are. Welcome to the program. What's your question or comment?
Hi, I'm Susan.
Hi, Susan. Thanks for calling.
I am so happy to be here. This has been an amazing episode, and I cannot believe the myriad of topics you guys have covered. I'm going to go back. There was a guy that said he was 60, and he was young when JFK was assassinated, and John. And I am the same age, and I remember all of that. I also had the opportunity to meet John in the 80s when he was dating a lot of actresses. And I happened to be in that profession at the time. And I remember meeting him and talking to him. And I was from a Irish Catholic Democrat family, and so the Kennedys were gods to us. And I just remember thinking what a weight he bore from his family and from being part of that and being under the microscope all the time. So what I'm just wondering, because President Trump did not release all of the files related, I've been trying to think what could possibly make him not release it. What could it have been?
Yeah,
that he would not release it.
Yeah, like I said, the only thing I can think is that it's about timing. I mean, obviously they're in the midst of a takedown of what I see as the CIA and this criminal cabal. But Don, what do you think? I mean, what could potentially have stopped President Trump from releasing those files when he said he was going to?
Well, it certainly looks like somebody talked to him, whether it was from the CIA or someone else. And you got to remember, these people are under a lot of pressure because he has a very young son. I mean, Barron was probably 10, 11 or something years old at that time. So you don't know what they tell these guys. I mean, I think as far as they say, well, you know, you want something to happen to your son. I don't know. I can only speculate, but I do know, as I said, Roger Stone told me he knows about all the conspiracies. So I don't for a second believe that he doesn't think there was a conspiracy. And he alludes to these things all the time, but He does stuff, you know, he talking about Vince Foster's murder, who I also read about in Hidden History. During his campaign, one of the many little tidbits he threw out there, you know, he said, well, you know, a lot of people think he was murdered. So he knows about that as well. But then when he nominates Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, he nominates the guy who led the cover up for Kenneth Starr into Vince Foster's murder. So, you know, so that's the kind of things where you scratch your head. What is he doing here? Because he has to know that, because he knows about all the conspiracy. So I can only speculate. I don't know, you know, again, if they threaten him or whatever, but certainly, and I don't know that there's going to be any smoking gun in any files either. I don't think there's anything committed to paper that says this is how we're going to kill President Kennedy and here's who's doing it. You know, I don't think they're leaving that out in the record, but I'm sure there's interesting information there. But and there's no excuse at all for anything to be withheld, because if he was killed by a minimum wage loser Marxist defector to Russia, and there was no conspiracy, why were any files ever withheld for national security?
Absolutely. And now, Don, to that
I agree
point, well, just real briefly, that to Don's point about the cover up and the Ken Starr investigation, the only thing I could think of would be that if President Trump is aware of that situation, perhaps having that leverage over Brett Kavanaugh might mean that he's going to vote in the way that we want him to vote, to make sure that he's doing things correctly, you know, blackmailing in a good way. All right, Susan, do you have one follow-up for Don, and then we got to bounce off because we are over the time?
No, I do not, and thank you very much. I appreciate all of you so much. Thank you for taking the call.
Oh, thank you for calling in. I appreciate you, and hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, Guy, we're going to finish with you, buddy. What's going on?
RP, how are you, my brother? Say hi, give the daughter, the mom, the dogs, the real girlfriend a great big hug for me. Let them know I miss you guys.
Back at you, brother.
And Don, I appreciate all your hard work. One thing's for sure, at this point in time in our lives, there's definitely a shortage of historians in the world, at least vocal ones that are coming out. So more power to you, brother. I hope that you are going to vote soon so that we can all be free to have our First Amendment rights.
Most definitely.
Anyway, I just really want to ask you a personal question. Don, do you believe that there is any possibility that JFK Jr. is alive today?
Sure, there's a possibility. I mean, I think it's very unlikely, but as I said, I know from investigating that he didn't die the way they said he did.
Yeah.
So the official story is wrong. So, you know, whatever else is there, it's certainly stranger things have happened. And we'd all, as Zach said, we'd all love to believe it. It would be a wonderful, nothing better than to see JFK Jr. walk on stage.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And, you know, I mean, that would be, certainly we're all rooting for that. That would be great.
Amen. Again, there was some footage of a Vincent Fusca, the first Vincent Fusca, and one thing I noticed is that there's been two Vincent Fuscas, which is highly suspicious in my opinion. The first one, after he was picked in a video, completely shaven, and they did the cheek-to-cheek comparison and everything, it really did look a great deal like an aged JFK Jr. Did you see that? Were you able to see any of that?
I've seen a lot of pictures of. I didn't know there were more than one Vincent Fusca, but I've certainly seen pictures of it.
Yeah. There's one that would essentially be the same height as JFK Jr. and then another one who's much shorter, under 6 feet tall. But they both have, you know, the same look, and they're both going as Vincent Fusca. It's another layer that just makes it all the more confusing, you know. I mean, that makes me think it's orchestrated, you know. I mean, they're doing it for some reason.
Well, as if the folks in the audience believe as I believe, they know the truth and they are awake, and they know that even if these perpetrators that I mean, because I'm a child of the Kennedys in a way. The day I came home from the hospital, my whole family was crying, and I was born into this sad world the first day I came home from the hospital, because it was the very day that they announced on the television that JFK himself had been assassinated. So I'm a kindred spirit to him in a way. But you know, if you believe as I believe, justice truly never goes unpunished. That there is a justice in the end. And now being full time in the ministry, I have faith that God's going to take care of these perpetrators, because I know that once you come out publicly and say, I'm going to splinter the CIA in a million pieces, there's going to be some retribution on the other end. And now in this great awakening that we live in today, with so much information coming at us from every avenue, I just feel honored and blessed to be alive in this historical time, because I really think that as you know, as I live streamed the return all day today, that was with the church in the actual lawn of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. today. That's all I did all day, and it was just amazing. But I just wanted to say that have faith, my fellow Americans. They can take the easy way out, but that's still a horrible way to go. They're all going to pay sooner or later.
Absolutely. All right, Guy, I love you, brother. Thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah.
So good to see you, man. You're always a friend of this channel, so remember
100%.
that.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. God bless. Say goodnight to Gina for me.
Love you, Don. Thank you for all your hard work, bro.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless,
Bye-bye.
brother.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, so you guys, I just need to do just a couple of thank yous here. Hold on, let me get Don's audio fixed so that we'll be able to hear him. There we go. Okay, so Hey Jude said, sorry I missed a few shows. No problem. I know that everybody has lives. Did you get the Spygate playing cards I sent you? I got some Spygate playing cards some weeks ago, so I don't know if those are the ones. If these are new Spygate playing cards that you sent recently, I haven't gotten them yet, but I'm sure that I will. Daro says, great show. Nikki says, hey Red Pill, I have seen I've just sent you an email, subject Nine's video showing that our favorite Anon said yes to Is JFK Jr. Live. Please check the video and tell us what you think. Thank you for everything. I certainly will, and I'll end up talking about that tomorrow. Daniel, thank you very much, Daniel. And then also thank you to Penny. All right, Don, thank you for being here with us tonight. I appreciate it. It was a great show. Next time, I think we should just do the Clinton body count. Just only people on the Clinton body count. That'll give us 2 hours of material easily.
Easily.
All right, so you guys, if you want to follow Don, you can find his Twitter in the description of this video, also his website, also the link to buy all of his books on Amazon. I highly suggest that you do that. Don, what do you want to leave the audience with?
Also YouTube, please find me on YouTube.
Oh, yes.
I need more subscribers there. I'm like about 260,000 behind you, so so I need a lot more. But yeah, I mean, people just again, it is nice to see people awake, and people are out there searching for answers. And the last caller guys talked about the First Amendment, and I'm a free speech purist, so I think it's very important. And right now, the left doesn't believe in free speech anymore. So we need to keep that alive, because we don't have free speech, and that's why they're trying to censor the internet and censor shows like yours and reach a big audience. And this is the alternative. We're the media out here. So I'm grateful for forums like yours, and I thank you very much for having me on. And I always look forward to talking with you, and your audience is great. They're wonderful.
Absolutely, and completely likewise. I love having you on the show. Looking forward to the next one. We'll talk about scheduling after we get off the phone. You guys, don't forget to be here tomorrow at 7 p.m. for another episode of Comfy Sunday with our good friend and returning guest for the month of October and until the election, Mark Taylor. Mark Taylor is going to be back tomorrow. And don't forget also on Tuesday for the first debate, myself and J.R. Majewski are hosting the MAGA meetup in Ohio. I saw the mods dropping the link for the information to that. We've got over 200 Patriots that are going to be there on Tuesday. If you guys can't be there, I am going to be live streaming the event and then also the debate, and I'm going to be doing some commentary after it. So I hope to see you guys there. I hope to be able to meet you in person, and if I can't see you in person, then go ahead and check the stream. Once again, Don, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who participated. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to everybody who supported the show. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.